Hi everyone. I just wanted to give a quick demo on getting started with CODAP, which stands for Common Online Data Analysis Platform. This is a good way to get students involved with analyzing data and graphing it quickly. Um, it can do a little bit more than spreadsheets can do, but if students aren't uh, familiar with using Excel or Google Sheets, this is a freely accessible platform to quickly get started. Okay, so let's launch CODAP. Now, I'm not very familiar with this software, and so my strategy is with all new technology to use AI to help guide my learning. And so what I did is I used both ChatGPT and Google's Gemini and did a similar series of questions with it. Both of them I asked if it was familiar with CODAP, and it certainly was, and it gives me kind of a breakdown here of what the software can do and what it's meant for. And at any rate, I used it to answer one of our exercises from our data analysis class. And so let's design a simulation for the following scenario. Carry out the simulation for 20 iterations by hand. We're using technology, of course, we use CODAP. Compute the theoretical probabilities associated with the scenario and discuss the relationship between the empirical and theoretical probabilities you found. So we'll use it to do the simulation, to carry out the 20 iterations for the experiment. And so ChatGPT suggested that said, yes, of course we can use CODAP to do this, and it even suggested some examples for doing the simulation on coin flip, dice roll, etc. And so I said, yeah, give me step-by-step instructions for an example, and I warned it I'm new to CODAP. And so it gave me the example of flip 2 fair coins, and of course there's 4 different possible outcomes: heads, 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 tails, tails, heads, tails, tails. And the question is, what's the probability of getting 2 heads? And we'll do 20 trials to find that out. And so it gives me step-by-step instructions on what to do. Starts off, create a new document, and then we'll add a table in, and we'll make our first column trial, and the second column will be outcome. And so let's do that. So create new document, add a table, we'll do a new table, and so let's call this coin flip simulator, coin flip simulation. And our first column, let's call that trial. And we'll add a column, and we'll call that outcome. Okay, now ChatGPT suggested that we click the gear icon on the outcome column header and choose edit formula. Now there's no gear icon, but we can certainly use this formula random pick. And so let's copy that formula. And if we go back to our CODAP document and we click on outcome here, there is an option to edit formula. Use that, and we'll paste in that formula. We want it to randomly pick one of the 4 outcomes. We'll click apply. And we'll notice that nothing happened there. And so it turns out that if we put in which trial number we're at, then it works. And so let's add some trials here. We need 20 of them. I'm sure there's a way to speed this up, but 20 is not a huge number. So we'll just type these in individually, make this easier. Okay, so there's our 20 trials and our 20 different outcomes. And what we want to do, though, is count how many of each there are. And so ChatGPT suggested that we keep track of the successes. So we'll create a success column, and we'll enter this logical formula in outcome equals heads heads, and that's what we're counting, seeing if the outcome was heads heads. And go back to our document, we'll add in the success attribute and change that formula to outcome equals heads heads. So it's going to look over here at the second column outcome and see if it's heads heads, apply that, and of course it enters false unless we have heads heads, then in which case it's true. Okay, now it still isn't counting up how many heads heads we have, but if we let's see, so I suppose we could count that, divide by 20 to manually add, or computed column empirical probability with the formula, add a computed column. Let's just jump down to make the graph. This will be allow us to count it fairly quickly as well. And so we'll add a graph in, and we're going to drag the outcome to the x-axis, and we'll drag success to the y-axis. There's our graph, and graph the outcome. So there's the outcomes in that case, and this is optional, but let's put the pole success over here to the vertical axis. That kind of shows us the distinction between what we're looking for, the heads heads, and the other outcomes. And so in this case, we had 3 out of 20 heads heads. We can, if we click on outcome, we can actually re-randomize that. So run the experiment again, and we can see that our graph changes. And so there's only 2 heads heads in this case. It was trial 14 and trial 16. So you can actually click on the data in your table, and it shows where it's appearing over in the chart, which is kind of a neat feature. But so let's rerun that again, re-randomize. So in this case it's 3 out of 20, re-randomize. In this case it's 5 out of 20. So this one actually is right on the theoretical probability, 1 out of 4, 5 out of 20. All right, so that's one way to run this simulation. Google Gemini, I ran a similar series of questions. Familiar with CODAP? Yep. And so I do that for a reason. I like to sort of set the context and make sure that the AI knows what we're working with to start with, and so that kind of guides the rest of the chat and makes the AI output a little bit more accurate. And so I put in the same scenario, and lo and behold, it gave me some ideas here on how to do that. A little bit different strategy using the random number generator. And so it did suggest the same example scenario, flip the coin 2 times. And I asked for step-by-step instructions for that example. And, well, let's go through what this told us to do, demonstrate a little bit different formula, and different strategy here. So coin flip simulation will be our, let's launch CODAP again, create a new document. This will be coin flip simulation. And Gemini has us creating a table again, and then we add 2 columns, coin 1, the coin 1 result, coin 2 result. So let's add our table in here, new table, attribute name, rename that coin 1 result, and it has us do coin 2 result. So we're flipping literally 2 coins there, and so what we need to use for formulas there are we want it to be either heads or tails for each of those. And we're going to count up the total number of heads. So let's add that as our third column. So we'll add an attribute here, total heads. Let's make this bigger so we can see it. And well, the way that this formula works is if the random number it picks is less than 1/2, so random is a function that chooses a random number between 0 and 1, so if it's less than 1/2, it'll choose heads, otherwise it'll choose tails. And so we can use that for the formula for both of our coin flips. So let's edit the formula, put that in, apply it. Coin 2 result, we're going to do the same thing. Edit the formula, apply it. And again, we have a similar problem that they're not totaling, but what we can do are insert cases, and let's do 20 cases. And then once you get the index in there, then it actually runs your coin flip. And total heads, how do we calculate that? Well, Gemini gives us a formula to do that. And so total heads, as it counts up, it's going to count the number of heads between coin 1 result, coin 2 result. So we'll use this formula to count. Put that in for our formula, and well, we noticed that our AI wasn't quite right on that, and gives us an error. And so the error is telling us that there should only be 2 inputs to count. Of course, we have 3 inputs, and well, down below I kind of brought that up. So, we're getting an argument, we're getting an error. So, oh, okay, let me try to fix that for you. And so its suggestion is to just add up the logical formula. So it checks column 1. If it equals heads, then it puts in a 1 here. And if column 2 equals heads, then it puts in a 1 there. And so it's really counting the number of heads that we're getting. Let's use that as our formula for count instead. Edit formula. See what happens. And there, yeah, so 0, when we get tails, tails, we have 0 heads. When we get heads, tails, we get 1 head, and so on. And it looks like here, down here, we got heads, heads, and there's 2. So after a little bit of error correcting, we get what we're looking for. And so, well, similarly, if we want to say graph total number of heads out of our 20 trials, and we can see that in this example we've got 4 out of the 20 trials gives us 2 heads. And so the empirical probability here is 4 out of 20, and we can of course re-randomize these and our graph updates. Okay, well, there's a real quick example of a little bit of things you can do with CODAP. And like I said, I'm fairly new to it myself, but if you kind of support yourself with some of these AIs, then you can kind of get things to work out. And of course, as we saw, the AI generators are not infallible, but they definitely give us some support. And if we are getting some errors, we can explain those errors, and often it'll be able to correct it. All right, that's it for now. Take care.